Hello and welcome to the Voice of Liberty podcast. My name is Henry Conley. Always glad to have you guys here. Tonight I want to talk about COVID-19. I want to talk about shutdowns, and I want to talk about what happens next. As everybody knows, we're getting a massive surge in cases, and we are getting a massive influx of new patients. The demographics changing though. For these new patients, these new cases, the demographic has shifted noticeably younger. Why? I want to try and see if maybe we can address this a little bit tonight and talk about what really should have been done from the start. So when COVID-19 came to the United States and started infecting mass amounts of people in the United States, myself and many other people of similar thought to me began talking about the 1918 H1N1 outbreak. And when we started talking about that 1918 H1N1 outbreak, people called us crazy. People thought it was irrelevant. And of course, I can understand why people thought it was irrelevant. I can kind of get where they're coming from. 1918 versus 2020. Medical advances in sanitary conditions, advances in how we live. They've taken a large leap forward. But the thing I argued from the start was that one thing has not changed between 2020 and now. Or 1918 and 2020, I apologize. And that is the innate nature of humanity. The innate nature of being a human being. See, one thing that did not change between 1918 and 2020, that did not change between the H1N1 pandemic and COVID-19, is the human nature to need to be out. The human nature to need to congregate. The human nature to need to socialize. Now, in 1918, it looked a little different. How you congregated, how you socialized, what you did, a little different. But in the end, it's still pretty much the same thing. See, 1918, one of the most famous, and I've talked about before on this podcast, events that's referenced for the spike in 1918 was the parade in Philadelphia. See, prior to that, everybody was taking precautions, but they held a parade in Philadelphia. And a week or so later, Philadelphia's hospitals were overrun. Well, we look at 2020, and states started to allow bars to open up and allow people to be inside of the bars within close proximity, not physically distancing, and generally not wearing masks. And what are we seeing 90% of these new cases linked to? That very behavior. Now, I'm not going to pretend I'm not out doing things. I'm not the pot calling the kettle black. But there is a way to do things, to socialize, and to get out and enjoy yourself while being smart and while taking proper precautions. This past weekend, I went to Wildwood, New Jersey. Why? Because I wanted to go out. I wanted to sit on the beach and I wanted to get in the ocean. What I did, though, that was different, was when we got there, I didn't park my chair on the beach next to a couple hundred people on either side of me. What I did was I positioned my chairs under a pier within a 10-foot circumference around me. There was no one. When I went into the water, I stayed away from people, except for my roommate, who, me and him, living in the same apartment, we are acclimated to each other. See, there are safe ways to carry out hanging out with people. There are safe ways to socialize in this situation. But see, the innate human nature is to not do these things, to not take proper precautions, and to not take safe steps towards this. So what are we seeing? We're seeing a massive uptick in cases, as I said. Any advances we made in the last 3 months are all for naught. They're done. There is no resolution. There is no solution. We have not accomplished anything. Because in 3 months, we went from actually having an impact on this virus and actually fighting it to now pretty much being back to where we were, but worse. As I was improperly calling it, I was calling this the second wave. As I've been informed, this is still the first wave. And now I think about it, when you look at the chart of the virus and the cases, we were on a steady uptick. Right about when everything started to reopen, we were still on a steady uptick. We did start to tank for a little bit as things slowly reopened. But thinking about it, we are still on the first wave of this virus. That's a scary thought, because the parade I'm talking about and I reference in history was famously marked as the second wave. And it was far deadlier and far worse than the first wave. We need to get a hold on this now. I'm not calling for the government to shut things down. I'm not calling for the government to mandate face masks. I'm not calling for the government to do anything. I'm calling for us, the people, to be smart and to do the right thing. Mass gatherings, put a pause on them. I mean, it's kind of sad when you see some really interesting groups determining that it's probably not safe to meet. One that comes to mind, Insane Clown Posse. They decide that it's too dangerous for their juggalos to all gather and hang out. But then you got groups like the Republicans and, dare I say it, the Libertarian Party, thinking that holding conventions during this with over 1,000+ delegates is a good idea. In fact, it is the worst idea possible. See, one of the things we have to recognize as a people, and this goes for any large gathering right now, and possibly even into 2021 at the rate things are going, is that you may not be sick, but you could carry the virus back home. I was talking to one of my close friends today, and they stated how they know someone who came back from an infected state with the virus, and they brought it back here, back to where I am, where cases were going down. In the last 3 days, and I referenced a age range and a change in demographic, in the last 3 days in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, we have had 117 new cases. Out of those 117 new cases, only 19 were in long-term care facilities. That is drastically different from what was being talked about just a month and maybe 2 months ago. See, a month or 2 months ago, roughly 60 to 70% of the cases in Montgomery County were in long-term care facilities. Now, 1 to 2 months later, things are changing. And they're changing because we, as people, are ignoring the safety and the care and the health of our fellow human. I don't like wearing a face mask. I work all day in a very hot environment wearing this. It's a protective covering. It's good for dust. It's really just to keep me from infecting you. It gets hot. It gets sweaty. I can't stand it. But my care for my fellow human goes beyond my own comfort. Yet, I'm witnessing people walk around without masks. I'm witnessing people walk around coughing, sneezing, exhibiting symptoms of this virus, and not wearing a face mask, and not caring. This is the innate human nature I'm talking about that has not changed from 1918 to 2020. See, we as a people, and by we, I'm actually referring to humanity. We as a people are selfish. There's people that will say that humans are not innately selfish, but we really are. In the long run of things, human nature wants to protect yourself over anything else. And it's exhibiting itself right now in this COVID-19 outbreak. The human nature to protect yourself is to take your own precautions while ignoring the precautions that protect others. Wearing a face mask, again, is not to protect yourself. It's to protect everyone around you. Libertarians, we strive to live by the nap. Not wearing a face mask is violating the nap. Not wearing a face mask and not physically distancing is a violation of the nap. And it is a dangerous violation of the nap. It escalates force against people, and it enacts force against a person. We need the change, and we need to recognize the dangers. We need to stop, and this is targeted 100% at anybody trying to say that this is a government hoax or it's blown out of the water. We need to stop acting like this is some crazy government conspiracy to take away our rights and our freedoms. We need to stop screaming how this is a ploy, how this isn't real, that how the statistics are fake. And we need to recognize that this is real, that lives are on the line, and that the things that we want to do right now, the sacrifice of not doing them is well worth the sacrifice over having 150,000 dead people. See, that's the big thing that matters the most, is 150,000 people dead means more than anything you could possibly want to do, including holding a convention in a hotspot at the testing facility for a hotspot. If we want to be the party of change, if we want to be the party of liberty, and if we want people to believe in us, then we need to give them a reason to believe in us. And this is my biggest gripe right now. We know that the only way for us to ensure peace and to ensure freedom for people is to get elected. But see, the people are not going to elect us if we can't even govern ourselves, if we can't even have care and compassion for our very own people. See, constituents, unfortunately, look towards the political powers as a way to seek safety, as a way to seek rest. There's no way that they are going to believe that it is us if we cannot even guarantee the safety of our own people and have the wherewithal to know that by us going out, by us having a convention, we not only risk infecting everyone there, but everyone in our community and everyone we see from that site all the way back to our community. The last thing we want is for the second biggest outbreak of this virus to be linked to us. Leave that for the Republicans. They've tarnished their name enough with Donald Trump. We don't need to do it. Be a voice of liberty. Awaken the voice of liberty.